Welcome to the Styleframe Saturdays podcast. I'm your host, Caroline Lee. Join me as I take a deep dive into the wonderful world of style frames and interview those who are industry wizards when it comes to this stage of the animated production process. For those who may not know, style frames are pieces of creative that are developed during the pre-production phase of an animation project, and they help creators and clients alike get an idea of the overall style of a piece. Sometimes the initial vision is carried through to the end, and other times it ends up on the cutting room floor. During this podcast, we'll discuss projects of all shapes and sizes, and the challenges, rewards, and lessons learned while developing what I like to call each guest's favorite frame. Before getting into the details of today's show, the Styleframe Saturdays team would like to give a quick shout out to Riverside FM. Riverside is the tool that we use to develop this podcast, and it simply wouldn't exist without it. Its effortless ease of use and amazing support team are some of the many reasons why we're such huge fans, and we've got a link in the description for anyone who's interested in checking it out. So now that you know how we're getting this podcast to you, let's dive into episode 4. Today's guest is a motion design maven. She's one of the founders of Boxfort Detroit and also the organizer of MoGraph Mondays. She's worked on a vast range of projects over the course of her career, including the 2019 half-res titles, music videos, explainer pieces, and so much more. Not only does she create visuals, but she creates music as well. Talk about the whole MoGraph package. We're thrilled to have her on the show today and talk all things motion design. So please help me in welcoming today's guest, Julie Kraft. Hey, Julie, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. How have you been?
Good, great. You're at Boxfort in Detroit.
Very nice. So for anyone who doesn't know you, maybe we'll just jump right in. Would you mind telling our audience a little bit about yourself? You know, how you got into motion design and animation, the kind of work that you're doing, freelance staff. I know you just mentioned Boxfort. Where you're based out of, just a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, you bet. I'm in Detroit. I've always been in Detroit. Never really lived anywhere else. Was born in Detroit, actually born in Detroit, the city proper. I live in the suburbs now, as do a lot of people, but I was actually born here. So that's like my cred, I like to say.
Very cool.
I've been in Detroit for a while. So really quick background is I started using After Effects in 2001. So
oh, wow.
I grew up with Grayscale Gorilla and Video Copilot, Andrew Kramer, So I was working at Comcast, which is like a cable company. Not everyone knows it. It's kind of whatever. It's a big cable company, and like they had like an internal production department that did local cable commercials and whatever stuff. So anyway, a freelancer came in. I was a production coordinator. Freelancer came in using After Effects, doing like the lightning effect thing.
Oh, cool.
And I was like, that's amazing. I want to learn that. And so I started learning After Effects. I was already interested in like, I was already interested in video. My high school had a TV and radio station. So I already like did some nonlinear editing and even linear editing on like the reel-to-reel things and stuff. So I had some experience with that. Even a little bit of graphics experience. We had like a video toaster thing. So right off high school, I had that. And after high school, I went to this local like kind of trade school, Specs Howard, which is more like for broadcast and news stuff. But they did have Avid stuff there, so I learned editing. I started to learn like nonlinear editing.
Right.
Whatever. So so then I got to Comcast and I worked there for a few years or like 5 years. And like I said, I started using After Effects and was just self-learning from Andrew Kramer a lot at the time. Before we had the explosion of. This is before motion design was actually like a career path, right?
Yeah.
So I was doing that. Self-taught. And so then so I started learning that. So I got better. I just kept going, doing animation stuff. They moved me into a graphics position, et cetera, et cetera. And then I worked at some smaller studios locally, and I eventually ended up working at like a technology and interactive company here in Detroit. And that was cool because I was still doing like animation graphics and some video editing and shooting, like kind of doing everything.
Mm-hmm.
But they did like games and a little bit of AR, VR and stuff. So I got to make some assets for some iOS games and learn a little bit about the interactive side of things. They eventually got into VR, which is cool, and a little projection mapping. So that was a really nice introduction to like kind of the other side of the industry.
Sure.
But yeah, over time I was like, oh man, I don't think I can. I'm like not happy working anywhere. So I made the decision, like I'm going to go freelance. And I basically planned out 6 months ahead. I'm like, okay, I got, this money cushion, whatever. This is the date I'm planning to go freelance. So yeah, I put in my notice, whatever. I already had stuff booked before I even went freelance because I had been contacting everyone like that I had worked with previously at different studios and agencies and be like, hey, if I go freelance in, 6 months, a year, would you have worked for me? Or if you don't, like, keep in mind, like, it'll be happening, like, I'll be around.
Mm-hmm.
And that really worked out to put out those feelers like ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
Because then I had work right away and that was great.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I always tell people, because jumping to freelance, like, it's like so scary for everyone. And it's really hard to understand it until you do it. And it's really hard to even do it until you've totally quit, because you can sort of moonlight for a bit,
Mm-hmm.
but when people want to book you freelance, they want you 100%. So
Yeah, no,
it's
for
a crazy
sure.
jumping off point.
Yeah,
But yeah,
absolutely.
so yeah, set a date, planned it, and I've been freelance ever since. That was in like 2013, and then so I've been freelancing since 2013, and then in 2014 I started Mograph Mondays, which is a local meetup here in Detroit. We've been paused for COVID, of course, but we did it for 5 years straight, pretty much up until the pandemic.
Wow.
And yeah, it's been like once a month, ended like last Monday of the month. And we got a pretty good community like due to that. And then different studios like Gunner and Hobbs and other studios, Lunar North, that we have around here. Yeah, but so we have a pretty thriving community despite how, like, we're like a mid-level city or whatever.
Yeah, no, there's a
So
ton
that
of
is
creative coming
cool.
out of
Yeah,
Detroit right now.
yeah. And I'm just bragging that I really built up the community because I had those meetups and stuff. And
So
that's people
Mograph
tell
Mondays
me.
in Detroit, that's is that an offshoot of what Liam started as well, or is it just the fact that you both have like the same
No,
exact name?
Liam is the offshoot of me. Or no,
Oh,
well, Liam was doing a Mograph Mondays in his city, yes. But that's kind of been paused. But yeah, so Mograph Mondays is my thing. Of course, Liam's got his own stuff, and Liam had Monday meeting,
oh, Monday meeting,
or
that's
I don't
what
know
it
if that's
was.
still going
Okay.
on. Yeah, but Liam was doing a local Mograph Mondays, like kind of like chapter thing,
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah,
for
I
a
was
little
like,
bit.
I know
So
it sounds familiar, and I'm like Mograph.
yeah, I know
The name
everyone gets
Mograph is in a lot of stuff.
because yeah, School of Motion puts out the Motion Mondays emails.
Yes,
Liam and Mark do Monday meeting, and
that's
then I
what
do
it is.
Mograph Mondays, and you do Styleframe Saturdays, and we're all a bunch of
And we're
goofballs.
all just taking a bunch of days out of the week to just like talk
I
about
know, we
motion
need
design.
something. I always call Sundays slow graph Sundays because it's like don't
I
work on
love
Sundays.
that. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. So that's my background, and then now here I am freelancing. And I have Box Fort, which is where I am now. I'm in a little like recording booth area we have, and this is a studio space that it's just a bunch of freelance friends. We share space, and we all do our own work here, but it's nice to have the collaboration around you, to look at stuff. And we haven't done any projects as a studio. We did do the titles for Half Res in 2019 as a group, as pro bono, but that was a really fun group project.
Very cool.
Yeah, so we're like a freelance collective.
And so
Box
everyone
Fort.
at Box Fort, did you guys know, pardon me, all know each other before you came together as a collective? Like, did some of them work at
Um,
Concast with you, or?
no. So actually, so there's a group of them that went to a local community college,
Oh, cool.
and that group of people, like, they all knew each other, and then they started coming to Morgraph Mondays, and that's how I got connected with them. And they kind of became like the core group that was always showing up. I was like, oh, you guys are like always here. What's your deal? So yeah, I really started connecting with them because they were just always around. They were the most, participatory in the community, because we had different people share projects every month and everything, and they had all wanted to do it and do like the banner graphics and the monthly event graphics and all that. So yeah, we all just became close because they were just like really involved and really part of the community building. So that was really great.
Very cool.
Yeah, so that's how I got to know everyone here. That's
Wow.
part of Box Fort now.
And
Yeah,
so
it's
Box
our
Fort, when did that form again?
magic
When
stuff.
did you guys officially form?
2017 is
Okay,
when we like
wow.
signed the first lease. We're on our second building now. We were at another building for a couple
That's so
years.
cool.
Yeah, so we're in Detroit, kind of like north of the main downtown area. For anyone who's been here, and yeah, and it's cool. And right now, Gunner and Hobbs, their space is across the street,
Oh, very
um,
cool.
in a temporary space, and then they are actually building a new space that's in like the same kind of plaza area we are. We
Mm-hmm.
have like a courtyard in the middle. We have a bakery and a coffee shop below us. So it's like our little creative campus. So we hang out with, it's like us, Gunner and Hobbs. It's like a definite little like creative campus community thing. So we all see each other a lot, and that really helps fuel the community in Detroit a lot too, because we just run into each other at the
Right,
coffee shop and
exactly.
everything.
No,
So
that's so nice. Oh man,
yeah,
that
it's
sounds like
very
a ton of fun to just kind of be around all
Yeah.
these creative minds like all the time
It's a
in like such a
dream.
close proximity as well.
Mhm.
Very cool.
Yeah, that's us. That's
And it's
Detroit.
and it's a bunch of freelancers, right? I think you had mentioned
Yeah.
that. Okay.
Oh
Very
yeah.
cool.
So Boxforce freelance. We have like, well, we will have people that probably work remotely and do full-time job stuff, or we will soon have some people. But
Right.
yeah, mostly it's freelancers. Yeah.
Very
Yep.
cool. Very
Yeah.
cool. Well, I'd love to jump into the main event of the show with you.
Yes. Let's do
Now
it.
knowing a little bit about your background with, Box for and MoGraph Mondays and,
Hmm.
the type of work that you do. So yeah, if you could tell us a little bit about the piece that you selected, that would be awesome.
Yes. So what's intriguing about you asking me to be on Style Frame Saturdays is like I don't make style frames that often, or quote unquote style frames, right? I kind of jump into the production right away. But like, and yeah, I don't often end up doing pitches. I end up working for studios, and et cetera,
Hmm.
et cetera. But yeah, I was looking for like some client work, and then my friend was like, "Oh, why don't you just show the personal project you've been working on?" So yeah,
Yeah.
this is for a personal project, and I made this first frame um, like almost to the day today, a year ago.
Oh, wow.
So part of this is I want to show how this has developed over time, like incubating in my head and stuff. So
Yeah, for sure.
all right, so I made this when like NFTs started being a thing. I
Hmm.
was like, I'm gonna make NFTs. Yeah, all right. This is before I like knew what was up. And I'm not gonna share my opinion on that, but people have opinions on NFTs. I don't know if you've known this if you've ever
Yes.
been on the internet.
Conversation, a
Yes,
completely separate conversation for
yeah.
another podcast episode, right?
Opinions exist.
Exactly.
Opinions exist. So yeah, I was making this. I'll make this an NFT, whatever, whatever. So that didn't. I never ended up making an NFT, and I never quite got it to where I wanted it to be right away. So I kind of paused on it for a while, and then over the past year, like I've gotten more into like electronic music and like
Oh, cool.
house music and stuff,
Hmm.
and I've been doing like some synthesizer music and stuff. So I made like a song. I've made a few songs, but I have one song I definitely want to release, and I thought, well, I should do like a music video for this song using that piece and maybe a couple other shots from it, from that same area, from that same like scene I made. Because I love like VJ stuff where it's kind of like repetitive animation, but different sound driven
Hmm.
things happen. So I was playing with this, and I was thinking like, oh, this could be like a looping shot that I just, it was kind of repetitive, but I do different crops of it and movements and like light pulses and whatever. So yeah, I started thinking about that. So over time, just you know, like in amongst client work and whenever I kept developing it. So the first thing people kept saying was like, ah, it like feels too small, like because I started with this square frame because I thought I'll put it on Instagram or I'll make it an NFT.
Right.
And people were like, and every time I would like zoom into it, they're like, oh, that looks better zoomed in. So moving on to the next frame, I cropped it, and we're like, and kind of like my friends here at Boxfer, everyone's like looking at you because I'm like, oh, help me, what's wrong with this? Like, oh yeah, it looks way better cropped. Like, okay, okay, okay. You can already see in between that frame and the first frame, those rings on the outside are getting more detail.
Hmm.
Those like lit rings that are orbiting the big center thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just kind of kept iterating and like versioning it, and
Hmm.
the debris and all that. So yeah, so I zoomed in there. I was like, okay, yeah, it looks way better cropped. Even though I wanted to show like, oh, I have this whole big space of stuff. But it's always like you're holding on to something, but like people who see it from the outside, they don't know what's in there. They don't care. They just care about like what they're seeing, the result. They don't know what led up to it. So it's like,
Right.
okay, I had to like let go of my original idea and my original like hope and dream
Right.
to achieve something better. And that's what helps with collaboration and people showing people your work and
For
everything.
sure.
Right. So yeah, so we got to the next frame. And this is like loosely based on um like I've read all the books of Dune, the Dune series.
Okay.
And near the end of that, no spoilers, I guess. Well, the history that you learn early on in Dune is that like computers, what they call thinking machines, are outlawed because the AI went nuts, and typical storyline. AI went nuts, and so they can't trust it. But whatever, the AI like escaped and made their own planet, and the name of the planet is called Synchrony. And one thing you find out in the books is that like it's kind of like a big cityscape, like maybe like Coruscant from Star Wars, but everything just like keeps moving and shifting,
Hmm.
all the shapes and stuff. So that's actually what my intent was here.
Oh, very cool.
You won't see it moving because these are just style frames, but
Right.
the whole surface of that planet and those rings, all those like kind of spline wrapped rectangles, they all move and the lights blink and like it's all this big shifting thing.
Oh,
And
very
that's what it'll
cool.
be once I release it. And who knows when that'll happen?
Very cool.
Taking me forever. But yeah, so that's that. So I kept putting more detail in there. Now another thing people kept saying. Let's see where I'm at here. One second. Let me. Okay, it's loading up. All right. So if you look at the third frame, what did I? Yeah. So actually, I cropped it a little more. That's the third frame there.
Mm-hmm.
I think I was just playing with the crop a bit more. But on the fourth frame, it's kind of where it's ended up after like a lot of time. And this was just rendered like, a month ago. So a lot of feedback people were giving me, if you go back to the third frame to the fourth frame,
Mm-hmm.
you'll see the inside, that opening in the planet. On the third frame, you'll see it's like kind of empty. And people are like, oh, it just like, it feels small. Like this thing doesn't feel like big, like, Star Killer Base or the Death Star, from Star Wars. It
Mm-hmm.
feels like, it just feels like there's just like a hole cut in it, So I kept saying like, put stuff in there, put stuff in there. And I didn't quite get it at first. I'm like, what do you mean? But then I played with it a bunch, and you'll see on the
Oh,
fourth
yeah.
one that, yeah, there's all this detail in there. If you zoom in there, you can see it. And like that just adds to the scale of this. It helps it feel like, oh, this is big. There's like a city inside,
Yes,
right?
that's so true.
And that's like a weird, hard thing. And I definitely was looking at pictures of Star Killer Base from the new Star Wars and kind of seeing how that was and how that was made. And I was like, oh, yeah, how do you just see an image and get a sense of scale with no reference, right?
Right.
Like you're in space, there's stars, those are kind of a reference, but
Mm-hmm.
with space, it's like a sense of scale is a huge thing. And that's something that my friend Billy Chitkin is really good at. His latest NFTs are like all these like big spaceships, and he's really good at like making it feel huge, right?
Mm-hmm.
And overwhelming. And I really love that. So yeah, this is where I've ended up with the look of this and the style. And like it's crazy how like over time this is incubated, and like I've been thinking about it, and I just leave it alone for a while and come back to it. Because it's a personal project, I have that ability and
Right.
that privilege to like just let this incubate for a long time. I mean, I do want to release it someday, but
Yeah.
it's just like it's a testament to like how like it is not just about cramming hard and doing dailies and like doing art every day. Sometimes it is like letting go and letting it incubate and coming back to it.
Exactly.
So I'm all about having multiple projects and shifting between them rather than just like slamming hard on one thing. It depends on your personality. Different people have different ways of doing things. So that's like
Right.
how I see it.
Very cool.
And what's crazy is like as I get older, I really think about like, so let's say like when I started, let's see if I get my hands on the camera here. When I started doing art, MoGraph, whatever, I was like, output. All that matters is output. Output is here. And what happens to me if I like don't sleep, whatever, that's who cares? I don't care about the process. Output, 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 right? Results, results, results. And like over time, like my like feelings and so forth, like I still want it to be good, but like, I've learned to like compromise. Like, okay, it doesn't have to be like amazing. Let's say just short of perfect, right? Because we're all perfectionists. So I'm like, we can never get it all right. But let's say just short of perfect. But like this has shot up a lot, whereas like the process matters to me so much more than just the result. I want the
Yes.
result to matter, but for me, it's like become way more like, how does it feel to me as I'm doing it? Do I enjoy this process? Am I burning myself out, or is this personal project a refreshing thing?
Right.
I mean, and more so, for client work too, I apply that, but it's more like my own personal work. I don't
No,
even want to do it
absolutely.
if it's too hard, quote unquote. Like I don't want to do it. Like I don't
Right.
want to spend all this time on a thing that I'll care about, but other people will only watch once and whatever.
And it's funny you say that, like the process over time
So,
has meant so much more and more because,
mhm.
at the beginning of this episode, you were also saying too that, like I don't do a whole ton of style framing, I kind of just jump into the production, process aspect of it kind of thing. But you can really see that like you're really paying close attention to like all the detail in that process of building out these style frames with what you've sort of been incubating over the past year or so.
Yeah.
And you can see that, development over time as you sort of go through each of these frames that you've, shared with us. So it's really cool to kind of see that whole process visually, over time. And then you just kind of vocally saying it right now, too, on top of it, that like, well, the process matters so much more to me now. And I couldn't agree more. Like, I feel like, when I started out too, it was like, I just need to get this thing done. Like these people need this thing done and I just need to get it done. So yeah, process was just like whatever the heck existed. Now it's sort of like, well, now wait a minute, let's take some time to actually think about this.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. And that's like, the difference between younger motion designers and older ones. And it's interesting to me because, I grew up into this, this became a job as I like worked into it, because at
Right.
first I was like, oh, I'm an editor and I do graphics, whatever. But then the whole like being a, an animator or being that as your job, being a MoGraph generalist, as they say, because I don't do cell. I do mostly through 2D, 3D, like 2D design, After
Yep.
Effects, whatever, that realm.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's always animators, hand-drawn animators, character animators, etc. But
Mm-hmm.
being this like MoGraph generalist, that doesn't work for Disney, doesn't do Pixar, even though that's what everyone thinks when you say it, right?
Right.
I
Right.
do animation. Being this like is a thing that came about like as I got into the industry. I didn't choose it, and nowadays people like choose that, like, oh, I'm going to do that. I'm going to take
Right.
school of motion courses or whatever, or I'm going to go to college. Some people
Right.
do that still.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So yeah, it's intriguing. It's interesting that way. Yeah, because where was I going with that? I lost my thought a little bit, but
Process mattering,
yeah,
process
process
becoming more.
matter. Yeah. Oh, yeah. The difference between me, who's like gone through all that, and like people just starting out in school, and like already being like, okay, this is MoGraph, and they already have these like crazy expectations, like, oh, people, and like everyone who's so amazing, like it's just a whole different way of seeing everything.
It is.
You
I mean,
know.
once you get into it, like you just said, it's so the expectations I think are just so different than from what
Yeah.
is being told at schools or institutions or
Hmm.
whatever.
Yeah.
Everyone kind of forges their own path. I mean, like your story, I feel like it's very common. I mean, I feel like my there's similarities with like how I kind of got into this stuff too. Like, I wanted to do animation ever since I was a kid, but like you just said, everyone was sort of like, well, you want to work for Disney and Pixar. I was like, yeah, that's the goal.
Yeah.
And like, no, that didn't end up becoming it at all.
Yeah. And that's
I
cool by
found
all means.
found a
Like that's
passion in
amazing work.
MoGraph. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Absolutely.
Very
So,
cool. Um,
um,
oh, sorry,
oh,
go
so
ahead.
there was one more thing with the frames I wanted to show. I don't know what we were doing
Yeah,
next,
no,
but
please go
so we're on
ahead.
number 4. If you go to the 5th one,
Okay.
so the big difference here is like, and this is the thing I'm a big proponent of, is compositing. Go ahead and
Yes.
flip between 4 and 5. So 4 is the raw C4D render, and then 5 is like with comping and After Effects, and you just see like everything that comes out of there,
Yeah.
like brightness, and I did do a lot of passes, like volume emission, depth, etc. Because there is a lot of 3D people, quote unquote 3D people, whatever, that are way more like, they want to see it in the viewport, like they do it on 3D, and I'm way more like, get it close and do compositing in 3D.
Right.
That was a Nick Campbell in the idiom, Graceful Gorilla, like long ago, where he's like, yeah, get it close, and then you can fine tune it in the compositing it. And I still adhere to that because I'm like, yeah, I'll get it close and then I'll push it, because you can always push it more. And there's things happening here with saturation stuff that they just you can't do them in cinema. Like
For sure.
as good as like I use Redshift, and as good as those like Redshift post effects are, you can't quite get it there. So yeah, and I do lots of sharpening later on, because 3D renders are like never sharp enough in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of sharpening. I actually use Neat Video Denoiser, and I've loved it because it like denoises and like sharpens, and it's a really good algorithm.
Very
So I
nice.
recommend that hugely. And it's really fast in After Effects. So to the point where sometimes I've rendered like, it's like I'm rendering this 4K, and I'll actually purposely like keep the samples lower so it renders faster. So it'll be noisy, but this denoiser will take care of that, and it's like
Yeah.
saves me heaps of time,
Yeah.
because life is short, right? We love this. We love doing this art, but like I don't want to wait for it to render
Well, that's what
forever.
exactly. That's what's so amazing to me when you hear some people who are sort of like, doing projects fully in camera in Cinema 4D
Hmm.
and rendering out with either Redshift or Octane. It's sort of like, yeah, those renderers are capable of doing that. It's sort of like, what are your render times though? Because
Oh, I know.
it's
Yeah,
probably take a long time.
yeah, and it's nice to do that because you can see it and interact with it, and
Right.
when you move the lights in the scene, like, oh yeah, this is how it's going to look. But I don't know. It just, there's always something that I'm not thinking of, or even like when I just do the in After Effects Shift Plus on like the transfer mode thing and cycle through them, I still do that.
Yeah.
Like I just get to surprising places. I'm like, oh, I didn't know that it could look like this.
Yeah, for
Like
sure.
with the render passes, I can just it totally changes the look of this, and I have like another scene, like let's say a dark version or a cool like film fade up kind of thing, with it. So it's like surprising. Like I love how and that's why, like, well, I do style frames, but like, I don't adhere to them as intensely, and that's cool that that's your side of it. I like hearing how someone else does it, but for me, I like the random discovery of things like
For
along the
sure.
way to one, because I don't know, I my brain, I'm always configuring stuff. Like everyone who knows me knows that, like, I'm always thinking of like some new thing for I can build for Boxford, or I can make this like private area, or
Right.
I'm always doing some crazy stuff. So my brain is always configuring stuff and always figuring out stuff. And it's like, I need a break. So I'm like, I want some part of the creative process to be more like organic. Oh, there's that word, organic.
Absolutely.
I keep saying that.
That's something
It's such a
that
buzzword, but
that's something Liam and I actually were talking about a little bit when he and I
yeah,
chatted too, that,
yeah.
you know, he had put these frames together for Skechers, and he was like,
Yeah.
okay, well, this is how we want it to look and feel and everything. And once he started getting into like, Houdini and started to build it out, he was sort of like, well, now wait a minute, like cameras are moving this way or that way, and some of the things that we thought that were going to be a focal point aren't exactly a focal point anymore. So again, like you just said, organically stuff even kind of changed, like as he was building stuff out too.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's just so true of any MoGraph project in general as well. You just think, this is how I want it to perfectly look based on these pre-production and concept development frames, and then all of a sudden everything just like goes to the wind, and you're sort of like, well, the camera's moving this way and now we're doing this, and the focus is here and not there, and you just roll with the punches about it. And I think that's what's cool about these types of projects, is that you have an idea and you have a vision. It could look the way that you want it to from the beginning, but it could actually look wildly different too, and it could be like a really pleasant surprise.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally. And that's cool. Yeah. I watched your episode with Liam, and that was cool. It's intriguing that he's doing Houdini, and like I'm interested in it, but I am sick of learning software.
I was just gonna say.
Like I'm just so tired. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I don't want to learn more stuff. I mean, some things are fun. Like actually, like I did, I have an Oculus Rift, and I did
Oh, cool.
Medium. I do want to try Gravity Sketch because I'm not really that good with 3D modeling, but I want to do more of these like techie spaceship thingies that need
Mm-hmm.
lots of detail. And I'm like, can I model in VR? Would that be more fun? Who knows? But that's excuse me. Uh, it's a little more gestural, and like that's interesting, And locally here, Colin likes my friend. She works at Gunner. She's like great with VR, and she did a lot of VR stuff for Gunner's Blend titles for 2019
Oh,
Blend, and
nice.
she's done some tutorials, and I think she did she's done some Maxon events talking about that process, and she introduced me to Oculus Medium and showed me her process, and that's very insightful and very exciting.
Very
Oh
cool.
yeah, but what I was going to say, so the thing about like how the creative process surprises you along the way, the other side of that is like once again like the collaboration. So having Boxford here, someone will walk by, look at my screen, and be like, "Oh, like what if you did this or that?" And like another surprising, just a perspective that is literally not in your brain; it's in another person's brain, and it comes in and like affects what you're working on. So
Absolutely.
that's like a great surprise, and you can do that you can collab online too. I do love that. Different online communities that I'm a part of, or different Slack channels, they often have like daily calls where those that are all working from home, they hang on out on a Zoom call, and they aren't talking all the time, but they're
Right.
just kind of there, and one person will share their screen and like be like, hey, can you take a look at this, and so you can it's way more freeform if you're in person with people, but you can totally do it online, and that's what's great about
Absolutely.
like cheaper internet and faster internet and all this video sharing. It's all over the place. It's easy.
I know. Yeah.
So
No
I do
time.
love that.
Exactly. Well, to add to that, what you were saying though too about like people at Boxport saying to you like well, where's the sense of scale with these frames that
Hmm.
you were building out? It's funny, like I feel like you can get that sense of scale from some of the earlier versions of this, right? With like the debris in the frame and everything, but it's so amazing how just that little bit of like looking into that like sphere, that there's like this space inside and there's like some building aspect of it in the middle. It's sort of like, yeah, that really adds like so much scale to it. And so, and yeah, that's just what's really cool about kind of figuring stuff out in the whole process organically, and then all the collaborative stuff that you just mentioned too. Yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
why these types of projects are really fun too. You learn a lot along the way.
I was totally not thinking about that inside there too. I was totally focused on other parts of it, the animation, the debris, those asteroids or whatever in the background. I was not. I was like, that part's done. And then well, Nick Parenti, who's here at Boxford, kept saying like, I want more in there. I want more stuff in there. He wasn't actually mad, but he does a really good fake mad. It's really funny. But yeah, he's like, I want to see more and more in there. It's my
And it
best
does, and it adds so
impression.
much. It's
I love it. So
when
credit
you
to him.
mentioned that, I
Yeah,
immediately was drawn to it. I was like, oh God, yeah, that's
yeah,
right. Like it really adds that sense of scale, and it's really cool to
yeah,
hear that, like, yeah, other people around you are sort of like, well, what about this? What if you add this, or what if you did that?
yeah,
Um, I noticed too that the coloring, like between what is it, frames 3 and 4,
yeah. Hmm.
um, it went from more of a blue to a purple shift, and I was wondering if there was
Oh
any sort of
yeah.
design decision behind that as well.
Well, mainly it's due to some other scenes and like the other shots I started making, and because I had
Gotcha.
more purple,
Okay.
and I'm not showing those 'cause those are sneak peek. Like those are hidden, confidential. No, but there's some other shots and there's way more purple to them. So there are other box photos like, oh, you should probably shift the blue in this to more to the purple. So we kind of went into the purple,
Very
and
cool.
like I ended up like someone said that some of these frames reminded them of like an older like computer game called Homeworld. I don't know, like from maybe the 90s or so.
Okay.
And it started me thinking about like, yeah, like 90s computer games, like Descent and a lot of other games I really liked. And then like, and they didn't mean it as in like, oh, it's like bad 3D or old 3D or whatever, but they just meant like something about it. And I think the purple really pushes that for some reason. It gives this
Yeah.
weird like
Like
it's
nostalgic or
yeah.
something. Yeah.
So and because I'm like not I'm not going for like real spaceship stuff. I'm going for kind of that hyper real or whatever, like an exaggerated real. And like I feel like a lot of those earlier video games, computer PC games, um, I feel like they were like that. Um,
Yeah.
like they kind of had a very stylized look more rather than a lot of things now that really go for a realistic look because we're actually in space and people know what that looks like and they do a great job at that. But yeah, I like to really push it a little more hyper real, but not totally. Yeah, it's like I don't know. I'm just trying to find like a medium, something between like photoreal 3D and cell shaded 3D, like something in between, a
For
little
sure.
like messy.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
yeah, and I have a couple other bonus frames. If you go to that other second shot frames, go to the no comp one.
Okay. No comp. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. So this looks super dark, but this is just like another scene. This is from that same 3D scene, but I put a camera along the rings. And when this is animated, you'll see it actually flying, along the ring. It'll be part
Very
of that
cool.
the remix. This, was like, oh, I want this, but like, I know it looks like, kind of dull and dead here. I'm like, whatever. I know I can comp the heck out of this and make it more. So this is even more about the like how I love compositing. So if you go to the comp one, you can just see how completely
Yeah. Wow.
different it is, how much more
Hmm.
comes out of there, and you really get the lighting from that purple, and there's so much coming out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of like
Details. Yep.
ambient. Yep. A lot of details. A lot of ambient lighting in the
Hmm.
scene. It looked really cool.
And then all with the render passes. Oh, a thing just fell next to me. That's weird. That's intriguing. Wow. Okay. Um, yeah, doing live production. Here we go. So yeah, I did a lot with render passes and then just different color correction. It was interesting. I did some interesting stuff using the depth pass to really get the like kind of what you call it, like the diffused or like the environmental foggy-ish lighting, like
Hmm.
on the bottom left of the frame. You're kind of getting that like raised black look.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's like kind of what I was really trying to get, and I was
Very
able to pull it
cool.
out with the render passes. And I'm sure I'll put more behind the scenes once I actually release this thing.
I love the behind the scenes stuff that you post on your site, by the
Thanks.
way, too.
Yeah.
Like you do a ton of really cool camera animation stuff, and like I think you posted some stuff about the Logitech thing that you did with IV.
Hmm.
That was really cool to see too. So
Yeah.
yeah, to even see your process in the making here right now too. This is just really interesting to get like a sneak peek into like how you're sort of like comping everything together and pulling this visual together for then even an audio piece that you put together as well. So that's something that's really intriguing to me too, is that you do some sound design stuff in addition to the visual stuff as well. And I wasn't sure if there were certain aspects of your song that like also were driving some of your design decisions, or is it really just like you had mostly the inspiration from the Dune stuff?
Yeah, no, definitely. Like, so there's a part of the song that just feels more like moving forward or running or whatever,
Hmm.
and that's what inspired the second shot. Because I'm like, okay, I feel like I need a faster moving thing because the wide shot is more slow. Like whoa, space, like this big thing. But I need something that's more like like Star Wars space battle, right? And
Very
that's what this
cool.
shot will be. So it totally inspired me that way.
Very cool.
So yeah, at this point, I think I've got like 4 or 5 different shots, and I intend to like just have a low amount of shots and just keep remixing them, crop into different parts. I want to see, because I think the editing part will be fun. I don't think the editing part will take that long. I think it'll be more of like just like a day or 2 days of doing that. And I'm going to try a couple After Effects plugins like Beatnik and Freak, FERQ React, that both are like audio driven keyframe generators.
Oh, very
I
cool.
think Beatnik does like audio driven time remapping, so you can get the robot thing. And then Freak React is cool. Like it has a lot of reactors, and you can have different audio frequencies drive, brightness pulses and so forth. So
Very
I'm
cool.
gonna try all that. That's gonna be fun. And I've wanted to like learn more about those plugins uh, for like VJ work or whatever. So I'm happy I made an excuse to do that.
That was actually going to
But
be
I'll
one
get
of my
there.
next questions for you was,
Yeah.
were there in doing this personal piece, were there any specific skill sets that you were hoping to like, practice as part of the, goals of the project? Or was it really just sort of like, hey, I want to create a cool visual for this song that I made?
Yeah. I mean, I like space sci-fi stuff, so I've wanted to push into that. And like, so I don't know if you know this. Have you watched the show The Expanse?
I
Do you know
don't
about it?
believe so. No.
Okay, that's fine. Well, Joyce Ho did titles for that show, and like she's amazing, and I love the titles for that show, and I've watched it a million times, and like a lot of work she does just feels like kind of like space cool, But
Hmm.
but it was like stylized. It had like this time lapse thing with the planet and stuff. So I just saw that. I'm like, I want to get more into like that experimental, a little bit, space reality sci-fi stuff. I'm like ultimately, career wise, I do want to get into title design more. And I'd love to do titles for a show like, one of the new Star Trek shows, or like Foundation, the Foundation titles by Imaginary Forces were amazing. That'd be a dream of mine to like do sci-fi titles for a show or a movie for one, like a big sci-fi franchise or something. So like I just thought, well, I want to get more into that. But I really don't, I don't know. I really like am not that interested in positioning myself as like a photoreal 3D space artist,
Hmm.
There are plenty of people that do that, like my friend Billy once again, and like the people who do like the visual effects for Star Trek, Star Wars, etc., etc. But like I like that, and I want to learn how to like light a planet the right way, whatever. But I don't know. I want it to be more. I don't know what it is. Whatever it is, I just need it to be me. But I do like doing stuff in space. I love sci-fi, robot, cyberpunk stuff. But those tropes are so like saturated that I'm like, I got to do it my own way.
For sure.
But I gotta be me. So I gotta figure out what that is. So
Very
really,
cool.
this is just me just trying to be me, and whatever that means.
I love it.
So yeah. So at the expense of maybe some shots of this will be like not look very photoreal, or might seem even a little sophomoric in like the 3D approach, but I'm going to use it as a fun concert visual moving kind of thing, and I think it'll turn into something. And the fact that someone thought like, oh, it looks like Homeworld, it looks like that old game, I'm like, that makes sense. Like I always think of Descent. It was like like a first person shooter in a spaceship, and it was one of the early kind of things like that. And yeah, that's kind of like where I've ended up. Even though it wasn't inspiration initially, that
Hmm.
wasn't my something I would look for as a source. It
Right.
ended up where this has ended up. So I'm really happy where it's ended up.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And what would you say some of the challenges and or rewards of working on this personal piece have been so far?
Let's see. Challenges. Well, calling a shot done. Perfectionism, etc. Of course.
Yep.
Being okay with it, like being close but not perfect, I guess. Just having a render and being like, I don't want to render this again. Like, I don't have time to render this again, and just like accepting like this is the approved shot at this point. That's a challenge. Those are mostly self development stuff, like accepting this that recognizing it. I'm having believe trusting my taste to know like, okay, this isn't crap. This is like worthy of production, of putting out there in the world, but also being like like they'll endlessly there's some new cool render on Instagram that's like, oh, my stuff looks like nothing compared to that, right? But just accepting that discrepancy and being like, well, this is what I feel good about. Like, if I look at this, it feels good. if I only feel crappy about this when I compare it to so and so's work or something, then well, that just like that is it doesn't matter. It's not that they're better. It's just this is different, and I feel good about this, and they
Exactly.
feel good about that, and I don't know. It's just not apple. It's not apples to oranges. It can't be. You know,
100%.
I drive myself crazy with that. So yeah, that self development was like a big part of this. Other than that, also, I mean, that was with the song too. So I'm like, I want the song to be done, right? So that was a challenge. And then once again, always stepping back and being like, am I having fun doing this? There's no reason to do this if I don't want to have fun. That's why, like, I
Absolutely.
didn't want to make a huge, like 5 minute short film with a lot of different shots. I wanted to just remix 4 or 5 shots because that's
Hmm.
fun. That's what I
Yeah.
want to do. And I actually have done that before. For instance, so Nick Parenti, he did the music video for Flamingosis Daymaker song.
Yes.
Yeah, and I did a scene from that. I did this like infinite tunnel thing. So that scene appears twice in the music video, and the second one was like a remix of it, and it was fun. I just sort of like cut it and like time remapped it and did some different color effects, and like that was a really enjoyable process to be like to take the stuff work I had already done and just remix it and do something else with it. So that's a lot of why like I did this. I approached this way because I'm like I want to do this, kind of like it the way I did the Daymaker thing and just remix the shots.
That's funny
So
that you
yeah.
say that now that you like
Mhm.
remixed like one shot into a different shot
Mhm.
on that project too, because I love his music. I love a lot of chill
Yeah.
hop stuff. And
Yeah,
so when
totally.
I saw that you worked on that too, I was like, oh, that's so cool. So now to hear you even say that, I just wanted it to be fun and remix like something else, and that's how you're applying it to this personal project too. That's a kind of a refreshing thing to hear, that
Mhm.
like it's sort of like I don't need to think up another, like entire concept, like, this concept works, so like, yeah, let's remix it. I think that that's like a cool approach to a project.
Yeah, totally. And like I like live concert visuals. I've seen Sigur Rós like every time they performed in Detroit, and then I saw Porter Robinson, like his side project Virtual Self. He did like a DJ set here in Detroit, and that had a lot of like, the music gets pretty intense,
Hmm.
like drum and beat like or drum and bass like, and but there's a lot of remixes of like anime clips and other animations and pretty simple animations, like how could you do that? But it was great how it would react. You'd see the same animation over and over, but one might have this chromatic aberration pulse, or it'll just flip, or the timing will move. And I was like, yeah, you really feel it, and I like that. It's
Yeah,
crazy. Like I used to like not like house music. I used to hate it. I used to be like, it's too repetitive, I don't get it. Like what's like it's so boring, and now I really weirdly love it. And I love the progression, because someone else recently like was like, oh yeah, it's interesting, like you listen to like a house song, progressive house, and like you'll hear, you realize that like it almost seems like the same thing, but you listen to the beginning and the end, like, oh, it's a totally different sound, it got to some totally different place, right?
that's true.
And
That's true.
this is like a weird advancement of me that like I don't know, because I used to think like, oh, house electronic music, whatever, like,
Hmm.
or EDM. People like to be like, "Oh, EDM isn't music, whatever." And I wasn't like that totally, but like I kind of have gone like, "Oh no, it's nice to work within the confines of a 4/4 beat and just be like, okay, let's make this easy. We don't have to. Let's just have this constant beat. Let's see what we can do within it. It's very interesting."
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
definitely. And if you don't mind me asking too, how did you get into music? Because when you had
Mm,
said earlier, like I'd started out kind of doing this mix of like, video and editing and MoGraph stuff, starting at Comcast. Like,
yeah.
were you introduced to some of this music and sound design stuff that early on, or you just kind of explored it on your own over time?
I mean, so I've done a little, like I'm not trained in any instrument totally, but I took piano lessons as a kid. I've learned a little bit of the Chinese violin, the erhu,
Oh,
and like
wow.
learned instrument stuff a little bit. So yeah, have like a little bit of music theory in there, but mainly I've just had friends that would use synthesizers, and I would love the sounds it could create. And more than anything, I just wanted to get some physical, synthesizers, turn knobs, and like make crazy sounds. It was like a fun, like off the computer, different thing. So it's entirely like I was interested in the hardware. Like synthesizers look cool and they sound cool, and it's really nice to turn some knobs rather than punching keys and using a mouse. And really, that's what got me more into this. I got a few little cheap ones, and then I don't know. Like once again, it's like organic discovery of something creative, You know, it's a creative shift, you know, away from the computer because you're using physical controls. And like you, like, I don't know, for me, you know, like I never knew what I was going to get. Like sometimes the synthesizer, you wouldn't hear anything because I had the cutoff or something turned too high. And I'm like, did I break it? Like, what? I can't hear anything. What is going on? So it's like a very interesting discovery of like, and sometimes you make stuff is the worst sounding thing you've ever heard that just like murders your ears.
That would
And
be
it's
me.
like, yeah, it's crazy that it's possible though. It's like this thing is unrestricted. Like this is ungoverned creativity. This thing could explode my speaker if I accidentally overload something, you know? And that's fun. Like it's
That's
very,
fun.
yeah, unsanitized creativity. It's very raw and yeah, it's like Mad Max with synth with music. So
I feel like there's a
that's
common
it.
theme throughout our discussion here of like, just
Yeah.
like this very organic, exploratory approach to
Yeah.
just like
Yeah. Yeah.
creating,
Mhm.
which I'm sure is true of so many, other individuals in the industry
Yeah.
and types of projects and stuff too. But it's just really nice to hear it, just like you speaking about it, like, like let's, throw the spaghetti at the wall. Let's see what sticks, like,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
refreshing. It really is.
Good. I'm glad. I just for me, it's got to be a little messy and a little wacky
Yep,
because you know, like I get a lot of my ideas like late at night when I'm trying to sleep or I don't know, just in a weird place
for
or, you
sure.
know, using you know, certain substances, you know, it happens. So it's just like, I don't know. It's like you can, and yeah, like, you know, I'm all for like planning and production, especially when it comes to client projects. Like you need like that, but
For
you need
sure.
some element of randomness or something, you know? That's why I
Totally.
love like the Cinema 4D MoGraph tools and other, you know, randomization tools. You know, I love generated randomized stuff. It's cool. Can help you
Definitely.
get to different places. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I love your take on that. I think it's great.
Cool.
As someone who, yes, I feel like does a ton of planning, it's a great reminder for
Yeah.
projects to not go so hard on that, to really just let things organically
Hmm.
come to what they're supposed to be or what they might turn into be.
Yeah.
Because you never know what you're going to get in the end.
But your process intrigues me too, of course, because like, you know, I need people like you to hold me to some sort of standard or some sort of schedule or some sort of something, right? And that's good. And yeah, I don't know. But yeah, it's like a little bit of both. You know, I like that
For sure.
it that's the thing. It's like another difference between, you know, I guess, you know, industry veterans and students and so forth. You know, students will start out, you know, whether they want to be freelance or whatever, and read the freelance manifesto, which is full of great information and ideas, or you know, learn the process of certain other people who teach and so forth. And yeah, before they've developed their own process, that's good. You should follow someone who
Hmm.
knows what they're doing and has achieved results that you're interested in having similar results. But over time, it like, you know, it becomes like, well, you've like you reach a point as an artist where you will not grow and you will not like advance anymore until you find your own process.
For
You
sure.
know, eventually you will use up everything you can out of other people's processes, and it just won't get you where you want to be. And you'll either change careers or you'll have to be like, okay, then that's it. Like not that you've learned all because you keep learning all your life,
Hmm.
but you learned everything you can from a certain level within the industry. You know, you've learned all the
Right.
basics. You know, it's like no, I have to find a new thing. I know it's annoying because you always think like, oh, everything's been done. Look on Instagram, everything's been rendered. Like, who am I? Like, I can't do any of this. But like, you can like you can like anyone, even if you use the same tools, Cinema 4D, Redshift, Houdini, whatever, you know, the Grayscale Gorilla packs and stuff. Like, yeah, you start with all the same ingredients, but I don't know. Like the mind is like endlessly full of ideas that have not been done yet, and it's
Well,
maybe something very subtle.
for
Like you
sure.
know, it may be something that at first glance is like, oh, there's another space scene, another cyberpunk scene, another you know, anime girl drawn, you know, with some crazy high tech headgear. But like there could be something unique about it that's your take, and that's kind of what you got to look for, a little like micro differences, you know.
Exactly. Well, and to
So
what you said earlier, just got to do a remix, right?
yeah, yeah, you got to remix it.
You got to remix it. That's all you
Yes,
got to do.
yes, yes, yes.
Well, this has been so much fun chatting with you about this
Yeah,
project and learning a bit
yeah,
about like, your processes, involved in the projects and the type of work that you do. Um, what was I going to say? If people want to learn more about like the stuff that you're working on and what you're up to, where can people find you nowadays?
Yeah, so my website is juliecraft.work. And then, and then my Instagram is Craftmatic. It's been that for a long time. I used to play StarCraft, and that was always like my username. So Craftmatic with a C and a K at the end. CraftMatick. And that's my Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, you name it. That's all that. And then
Very cool.
Boxfort, you can find us at boxfort.work. And also the Instagram for Boxfort is Boxfort Detroit Instagram. Our Twitter also is Boxfort Detroit. And there's also like MoGraph Mondays on Instagram and Twitter also.
Very cool. Very cool.
All my brands.
All your brands. They're all out there now.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much, Julie, for coming on the show again today. It's been just such a pleasure speaking with you and talking to you about all this creative stuff. We'll share some links to some of the tools and resources, studios and stuff that we've mentioned here for our audience to check out.
Yeah.
But that about wraps it up for today, everyone. Feel free to email us at styleframesatpod@gmail.com. We'd love to hear what you think of the show. And if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, and also come connect with us on social. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you again, Julie, for joining us. And we'll see you guys in the next one.